Hi guys, Ricky Pope here, and today we're going to look at the nerd table, and we'll get to that right after this. I've been using Coinbase.com and the Coinbase app for cryptocurrency for about 2 years now, which makes it really easy and safe to buy, sell, and store digital currency like Bitcoin and Ethereum. Sign up now and use my link at christiannerdsunite.com/Coinbase and get $10 of free Bitcoin when you buy or sell at least $100 worth of digital currency. Join 43 million other people who buy, sell, and manage their crypto on the world's most trusted crypto exchange. Check it out at christiannerdsunite.com/Coinbase. And now, back to the show. Well, my youngest daughter graduated on Thursday, and we had her party on Saturday, and we had lots of family come into town, and we sent her off to prom tonight. I've been so busy, and so I thought I would share with you one of my most commented on shows, the one I've gotten the most feedback about, and it's all about taking our chair at the nerd table. This episode explains what I mean by that and how you could get involved. Stick around to the end because I have some cool news to share with you. I hope you'll enjoy this encore presentation of taking your seat at the nerd table. We focus on 5 basic topics, and we talked about this in the very first episode. We focus on books and comics. You can check out episodes 11 and 12 for our great list of classic sci-fi books and a quick review of each one. And then we focus on technology. That's number 2. Episode 13 you might check out. It was all about the Consumer Electronics Show from 2021. And then we talk about movies and TV shows. And I've done a lot of episodes about movies and TV shows, maybe more than I should. Maybe I've weighted the show a little too heavily that way, but we've had a lot of great content come out this year. Then we focus on games, and I haven't spent a lot of time on games so far, but we are going to allude to some of that today in this episode. And then finally, and this is really where this episode really lives, and that's Christian living. Usually at the beginning of every show, I have some specific scripture readings that I do. Now, I don't have a specific set of scriptures I'm going to read beforehand today because we're going to talk about several different scriptures as we go through the show. We're going to talk about why Christians should be at the nerd geek table, and I'll start by explaining exactly what I mean. I'll take you back to when I was in high school and when I was in college. Just kind of getting started, I was into some role-playing games. Specifically, I was into GURPS, Robotech, the role-playing game. Champions was another that I was very interested in. These were all role-playing games that I had the books for. I never really had a friend group that was into Dungeons and Dragons. Now, fast forward to about 9 or 12 months ago, and I started checking out Dungeons and Dragons, and I started looking for some real play podcasts that were led by Christians, and just to see what the deal was and see how Christians deal with the idea of what Dungeons and Dragons really is. Now, I lived through the 80s, so I lived through that satanic panic, as they say, and that Dungeons and Dragons was evil. And I never really had that outlook specifically because I never really had dealt with it. I didn't know whether that was accurate or not. And I was simply directed at these other role-playing games for one very specific reason. These were the ones my friends had access to, or I had access to, and they were more targeted toward the fandoms that I was interested in, that sci-fi and superhero thing. And then we had GURPS, that was, if you're not familiar with that one, that's generic universal role-playing game, which you can pretty much do anything with if you've got the right books to go along with it. I started a little research and started looking for a couple of podcasts. One of the podcasts I came across was not specifically a real play. It was a gaming podcast about role playing and called Saving the Game. And some of you may have heard of it. It ended about just a couple of months ago, actually, after 8 years and over 190 episodes. And Grant Woodward, the main guy, the guy who kind of started the whole podcast off, had a saying that he used, and it's kind of stuck with me. And he said that Christians should have a seat at the gaming table. Now, what does that mean? Now, Grant specifically meant the tabletop role-playing game table, like Dungeons and Dragons or GURPS or Pathfinder or whatever other role-playing game you might be into. We use this phrase in Christianity that we are in the world but not of it. And it's not really a phrase that we find in the Bible actually, but it is a concept we can find in the Bible. John 15 kind of alludes to it, and John 17 also alludes to it. John 17, 14 through 18 specifically says, "I have given them your word. The world has hated them because they are not of this world, just as I am not of this world. I do not ask that you take them out of the world, but that you keep them from the evil one. They are not of the world, just as I am not of the world. Sanctify them in the truth. Your word is truth. As you sent me into the world, so I have sent them into the world." So we have a calling on us to go into the world with the word of God, with what God has bestowed upon us. And we're all called to do different things in different places at different times in different ways. And that is a beautiful thing. And that's what I want to talk about today. So why is it important? So this idea of being a Christian and having a seat at the gaming table is intended to imply that we should be where unbelievers are, ready to share what Christ has done for us when the moment arises. And Grant talks about if you have a gaming group and you don't have a believer there, when hard times come, and they will, when hard questions come up, and they do, if there's not a Christian there at the gaming table, then the word of God doesn't have a chance to speak into what this difficulty is that this person at the gaming table is dealing with. So our place at the gaming table is super important. Now, 1 Peter 3:15 says this, "But in your hearts revere Christ as Lord. Always be prepared to give an answer to everyone who asks you, to give the reason for the hope that you have, but do this with gentleness and respect." And what we're talking about here is being there at the table. Simply being there can make a difference. Being able to speak into the conversation, being able to give a gentle word, a gentle comfort in times of struggle could make the difference in somebody's life. Those are the times when we get to show who Christ is through our actions. What a wonderful reason to join a role-playing group. If nothing else, than to be able to be there to share the gospel when the opportunity arises. Now, I want to take this a step further. I really like Grant. I think what he said is a brilliant idea. And like I said, I want to take it a step further. not just the gaming table. It doesn't have to be an actual table even. And the table is used more as a metaphor, being where people are physically or digitally, with everything that's going on in the world today. This is April of 2001, and we're still dealing with coronavirus issues and people not being able to get together. So whether we're together physically or whether we're together digitally, we should be where people are. Jesus went where people were. Matthew 9:35 says, Jesus went through all the towns and villages, teaching in their synagogues, proclaiming the good news of the kingdom, and healing every disease and sickness. So he went to all these different towns preaching. Now, he didn't just go to the towns. He went to the synagogues. Why did he go to the synagogues? Because that's where the Jewish people gathered. He went to where the people were, and he shared the good news with them. So that's where I think we need to be. And he sent out the disciples in the same way. He sent them out 2 by 2. Luke 10:1 says, after this, the Lord appointed 72 others and sent them 2 by 2 ahead of him to every town and place where he was about to go. So he sent these people out ahead of him to start sharing the gospel even before he got there. And I think that's what God has called us to do. You and me, as nerdy as we are, as sometimes introverted as we are, I think there are opportunities where we are being sent into places that some other people would never have the opportunity to show up or speak into. Now, some of us are already doing it. It's like second nature. Some of us have to be a little more intentional because it doesn't become second nature for us. Wherever you are, I'm challenging you right now to step up and make that move. Now, we as Christians should be, in my opinion, at every nerd geek table that's available. Now, I don't mean you individually should show up at every geek event. That's not realistic. I'm talking us as a group, us as a people of Christ. We should have somebody representing who Christ is at every nerd and geek table we possibly can. Now, we've already talked about the role-playing table, and that's a great space because role-playing is a form of community storytelling. And what a better way to share the gospel than in a group that's already trying to create an interesting story. And maybe you can insert that into the story just a little bit. And when the occasion arises, you'll be able to share even more if you can. Now, what about the video game table? I actually know a missions group that is investigating how gaming could be used as a way to reach out to seekers. They're actually doing a study about it, about people playing games corporately. And I don't know all the ins and outs of what the study is, but I gather that they're focusing on the kind of games that require group participation, the team kind of games, where you've got 3 or 4 or 5 players playing together as a group, communicating with each other via headphones, and how can the gospel be shared in these situations? And I think that's super exciting that they're even investigating this. Now, I bet some of you are already doing it, and they didn't have to do a study or even ask you to. You just started doing it, and for that, I am very excited. Now, what about the programming world or the tech support table? I spent many years doing tech support in some very frustrating places. And I know some of you are programmers. I know some of you in the Christian Nerds Unite group are programmers. I'm not really a programmer. I've tried to learn some programming from time to time. I've worked with a lot of people that they live to code. It's not really where I live personally, but maybe that's who you are. I did do tech support for many years, so I know the struggles there. It sometimes can be hard dealing with difficult people. And if you are able to show the Holy Spirit through your life in these hard and awfully often lonely places, you could really make a difference in somebody's life. What about the video making table? Now, you may be listening to this as a podcast. You might be watching it on YouTube. Video is definitely my wheelhouse. I love producing videos. In fact, the poster's over my shoulder. This is a poster from a short film that I helped edit, and this is a poster from a short film I actually directed. I led the whole team of about 60 people to create that short film, and I love telling stories. I love setting up the situation and creating an opportunity for telling creative, interesting stories. And I'm not just talking about telling Christian stories, although that is a great thing to do. I'm also talking about, creating a team of people. I had many people on my short films that weren't believers, but they knew I was. That was never hidden from anyone. They knew who I was, and they knew what I stood for. I've been on larger productions where I'm kind of the small guy. I'm the production assistant. I'm the guy going to grab a lens or grab a stand for a light. But I'm the Christian on set, and they know about it. They know who I am, and sometimes I get an opportunity to share with them. Oftentimes, the set can be so stressful that those little things in life really come out and affect us. And sometimes I have the opportunity to share the love of Christ in those situations. And it's a beautiful opportunity. I love leading crews like that and being able to have that opportunity. In fact, I even worked at a news channel. I'm actually wearing the shirt for the news channel I worked for at one point. I loved working for the news channel. It was interesting. I shot and edited 2 news stories every day. The best part of being with the news team was that along with the reporter, I actually had the opportunity to give my input to the story. So hopefully my Christian life could come through the story a little bit, as much as I possibly could. Now, maybe you make YouTube videos, maybe you make, you video your kids having fun and doing silly things. Maybe you're into TikTok because that's the new thing. But, maybe you make videos to encourage people. That's a nerd space that needs to have a Christian witness. And along the way, you may impact people in ways that you never could have imagined. Now, what about the artist? This could be like episode 14 of this show. I interviewed Brainy Pixel and Mercy Way, and they're a team of different people that are creating Christian comic books. So maybe that's your thing. Or maybe you're just a guy or girl sitting around making fan art and you love doing it, love showing it off, posting it on social media. You could be impacting people just by creating that kind of art. And I know we have a couple people in our Christian Nerds Unite group that do exactly that. They do some very creative art and they share it with the group. And it all has a very strong Christian meaning. I love seeing it every time it pops up on my news feed. I even have a couple of friends who are believers that they're really starting to make a name for themselves by making comic cards. In fact, I have a set of comic cards right here that one of my friends worked on. They're working for companies like Topps in conjunction with Marvel and Lucas Studios. So there's huge opportunities to make your mark in art through Christian witness. Now, another thing is the music table. Playing in bands, posting videos of you singing or playing an instrument on YouTube. I'm going to talk about YouTube again. YouTube's big. I have a good friend who is in LA. He is a music producer, and he focuses primarily on jazz music, deals with secular jazz music on a daily basis, but he's also well known as a musical director for a well-known large church in the area. And he gets that opportunity to share the gospel with those people that he's working with on a regular basis. What about social media? I mean, most of you probably found this podcast through Facebook or Instagram, let's be honest. And social media is huge. I've been doing social media for a long time. It's where Christian Nerds Unite page and group came from. And I am also associated with other pages. You can check out Finding God Online or on Facebook, and you can also check out Insta Scripture on Instagram. Those are two large groups or large pages that I'm associated with as well. I've also helped ministries around the world with their social media presence, helping them grow their existing social media presence and helping them find seekers digitally. And this is something I do on a daily basis, working with indigenous pastors. Now, that's a little esoteric. That's a little weird. You might think, that's not anything I would ever be able to do. But you know what? If you know how to run a social media page, you may be able to make an impact just by stepping up and looking at your church's social media pages and helping them create something where the local people are actually interested in going to see the social media page of your church. I don't know. There's lots of options there. And if you're into social media and, that's something you want to figure out how you can turn that into a ministry, hit me up. I would love to talk to you about it. Podcasting is something else. If you like to talk, I talk a lot. I've done a lot of audio stuff over the years. But podcasting is something new for me. I have only recently really started doing a podcast, and I'm just starting to discover the sheer volume of different nerdy and Christian niches that are out there in podcasts and are being shared. There's something that about that people would be interested in hearing about. Maybe podcasting is something you could look into. The other thing, and this is kind of the last bit, is new and upcoming areas. This list is by no means exhaustive. This is just some things that I came up with when I was thinking through, what are some things I've been involved with that I know I can talk about that are things where nerds should be at the table. And I think sometimes they don't go there because they think they'll be ostracized, or they think that's not Christian enough for me to be involved in. And I think that is an issue. That's something that we need to consider. If we look at an area and go, I don't know if that's Christian enough, then maybe we need to start making inroads there. Maybe if it's not something sinful, why is there not Christian witness in that area? Why is there not a Christian witness in that community? And maybe you're the one to start it. There's tons of things that are up and coming. I mentioned TikTok earlier. I actually have a friend who started sharing the gospel with people on the street, literally sharing the gospel with people on the street with his cell phone out, posting it on TikTok. And now he has over 100,000 followers. It's ridiculous what some people are able to do. What's next? I don't know. What about augmented reality, AR? There's actually an AR church. You may not be aware of this, but there's a full church where you can create an avatar, you can wear an AR headset and go to service. They do a virtual church. They do a virtual baptism. And, people with social anxiety issues, people that are unable to get out because of medical or physical issues. This is a huge development for that group of people. It's a bit of an experiment just to see if it was doable, and it's happening. There are things that you know about that could really impact the kingdom in a special way, and no one else may be able to reach those people, but you have the skills, you have the ability, and you know what it is. I probably don't, but I want to challenge you to step out in faith. 1 Corinthians 9:19 through 23 says, "Though I am free and belong to no one, I have made myself a slave to everyone, to win as many as possible. To the Jews I became a Jew, to win the Jews. To those under the law I became like one under the law, though I myself am not under the law, so as to win those under the law. To those not having the law I became like one not having the law, though I am not free from God's law, but I am under Christ's law, so as to win those not having the law. To the weak I became weak, to win the weak. I became all things to all people, so that by all possible means I might save some. I do all of this for the sake of the gospel, that I may share in its blessings." I want to challenge you to ask, how could you get involved? What table do you have access to that you should be pulling a chair up to for the glory of Christ? How can you make a difference in the kingdom right where you are, doing the things you already love? If you take me up on this challenge or are already in the thick of it, let me know about it. I would love to hear your story and pray for you. Well, I hope you enjoyed that. That was honestly one of my favorite episodes to record. I do have some exciting news. Last week I mentioned we're planning on some guests coming up soon, but this week I can actually announce some of those names. And next week I will be back to producing new content. So definitely come back next week. Check out the show. And I can announce some of those people that I mentioned were coming on as guests. Coming soon, I'm going to have my interview with comedian Byron Trimble. And you might have seen him on things like The Dry Bar. And then I have a special interview with Katie Lee, a voice actress from some of your favorite shows like Adventures in Odyssey, Lego Star Wars, Muppet Babies, and the 1980s Dungeons and Dragons cartoon, if you remember that. I'm super excited about these two interviews and some of the others that I'm trying to line up for later this summer. Well, that's all I have for you today. Don't forget, you can find all of our social links over at our website at ChristianNerdsUnite.com. You can also find the link to our YouTube channel. And while you're there, check out the support tab. We would love to have you join us as a Patreon. Before we go, I want to leave you with a blessing. 2 Corinthians 8:7. "But since you excel in everything, in faith, in speech, in knowledge, in complete earnestness, and in the love we have kindled in you, see that you also excel in this grace of giving." Blessings. We'll see you next week.